It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and it's the start of an all-new month of movies. We are entering the month of April 1989, weekend of April 7th, and we've got some good movies to talk about this time around. Let's start off with what is not really arguably the best movie that came out this weekend, but one of the best baseball comedies of all time, and that is, of course, Major League. What a classic, man. I'm not the biggest baseball fan, but there are a lot of good baseball movies, and this is definitely one of the best ones. Major League is a funny, hilarious comedy. Tom Berenger, Corbin Burnson, Charlie Sheen, Wesley Snipes, Rene Russo, Bob Uecker, directed by David S. Ward, who also wrote the film. It's just a phenomenal movie. It's very hilarious. Great sports comedy, and good satirical comedy, too. I like how the owner of this movie is kind of reminiscent to Mark Schott, the owner of the Cincinnati Reds, even though this character is more based off of George Frontiere, who ran the St. Louis Rams at the time. No, not even St. Louis Rams. They were still the Los Angeles Rams when this came out, and they didn't move to St. Louis until about 6 years later after this movie came out. But that's who the Rachel Phelps character, the owner of the Cleveland Indians team, is reminiscent of. But regardless how you look at it, it's a really funny movie. It's really one of the funniest sports movies ever made. Like, it's a movie that has so many great memorable moments to it. It's a classic movie. The sequels aren't as memorable. I honestly like the third one over the second one, which is a really. It's hard for me to say that. It's hard for me to say that because I know the third film gets trashed on a lot, but so did the second film too. I mean, I like the third film better than the second one. We'll get to that one. We'll get to those sequels whenever we get to that point. But this movie right here is the classic one. This is the one that everyone should see. Major League, great sports comedy. Definitely check it out. Definitely worth it. This weekend also gave us another very underrated comedy featuring some very recognizable talent. Michael Keaton, Peter Boyle, Christopher Lloyd, Stephen Furst from Animal House. And that film was, of course, The Dream Team. From the director of Private Benjamin, who would go on to direct the two My Girl movies, The Dream Team is a very underrated comedy. I think it's one of those movies that when I was building my DVD collection in the mid 2000s, I saw this movie in the stores. It was cheap. I figured it could be worth a watch, and I watched it. It was one of the funniest, most over the top movies I've ever seen. Like, I love the chemistry between the four characters, Keaton, Lloyd, Boyle, and Furst. I like their unique, distinctive personalities. I love how over the top the movie can get at times. It's just a funny movie. It's so insane. It's so over the top. Michael Keaton in particular is hilarious in this movie. He doesn't get a lot of credit for this movie, but it's just a fun movie. It's a fun movie. You also got Lorraine Bracco in this, who would later go on to be in Goodfellas and, of course, The Sopranos later on down the road. But yeah, it's a really funny movie. It doesn't get the attention I think it deserves. It's definitely worth a watch. If you can definitely check out The Dream Team. It's a very underrated comedy. It's one of the early movies that Imagine Entertainment did, which is, of course, the company that Brian Grazer and Ron Howard are associated with. And like I said, it's a very funny movie, very underrated movie. Highly recommend checking out The Dream Team. So, on to the next movie, and how about a little Jean-Claude Van Damme action? Yeah, so this isn't the movie based off the character from Teen Titans and DC and all that. This is Jean-Claude Van Damme in one of his first movies after he broke out with Bloodsport the year before. And, not really much more you could say about this one. It's a canon movie. It's a canon action movie. It's pretty much what you'd expect from canon. And Albert Pujols directed this. He would go on to direct movies such as the Captain America movie from the 90s, Kickboxer 2. He made 3 movies in '89. I don't think any of them were real successes, but except for this one, which apparently spawned 2 sequels. But I can't really say much about this one. I haven't seen it before, so I mean, from the trailer, it definitely looks like what you'd expect from canon films. It looks like an over-the-top action movie, martial arts film, and like I said, that's pretty much all I got to say about that one. We got one more movie to look at, though. Dead Calm, which is not only known as the first real American debut for Nicole Kidman, who've been making movies in Australia for these years prior to that. But it's also made by the same team who did the Mad Max movies. This is Dead Calm. So as you can also see there, some other notable names in this movie include Sam Neill, pre-Jurassic Park, Billy Zane, just coming off of Back to the Future. The director of this film, Noyes, went on to do movies such as Blind Fury, Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger, Sliver, other movies such as The Quiet American, Rabbit Proof Fence, and of course, Kennedy Miller is the company behind Mad Max and The Road Warrior. And like I said, it's one of the final projects Nicole Kidman did in Australia before she went on to become an international superstar, starting with Days of Thunder. Something I didn't know about this movie was that originally Orson Welles was trying to make this movie for a number of years, and even with a guy of his caliber and his celebrity, couldn't even get this movie made. And what they did here is really good. It's a really solid psychological thriller where you're just focusing on these three characters, this couple, and then all of a sudden this guy that comes out of nowhere, and then he becomes and it's a battle between trying to stay alive, trying to stay away from this guy from harming anybody. But it's a great movie. It's a great psychological thriller. It's definitely a very well-made movie. It has a lot of good tension to it. The story, I think, is very good. I will say the ending kind of cops out a little bit, but other than that, the movie itself is really good. Like, I definitely recommend checking this one out. Prepare to be a little disappointed by the ending, but overall, I'd say definitely give it a watch. I'd say it's definitely worth your time by watching it. So with that said, that's going to wrap up another episode of Time About the Movies. Next week, we've got some interesting movies to talk about here. We've got two teenage coming-of-age movies. One of them is a great movie, the other not so much. We've got an action comedy from Touchstone, and some other movies that we may or may not get to, depending on if I can find trailers for it. But next week should be very interesting to talk about, and by next week I mean the next episode that we talk about. So thank you guys for watching this one, and as always, if you like what you see, go ahead and hit the playlist below and check out some previous episodes, and check out the last episode I did. So I'll see you guys next time, and until the next time I see you, take care.